right, hello everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Solidarity Among People of African Descent in the United States. I'm Alex Cranston, the Media Manager for the Catholic Apostolate Center, and I'll be your host this afternoon as we welcome our guest speaker, Valerie W. Batta. Valerie is a cross-cultural specialist, and we're pleased to have her speaking with us on this important topic. If you have any technical issues during the presentation, please send a message in the chat box on the right-hand part of your screen, and I'll be sure to try to help you out. I will now turn things over to Valerie.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for everyone watching me from Durham, North Carolina. Before we start, let's just have a quick prayer so that whatever is said today is in the name of the Lord. In the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, in the name of Jesus, this is the confidence that we have in you, that if we ask anything according to your will, you hear us. And since we know that you hear us, Father, whatsoever we ask today, we know that we have the petitions that we desire of you. Holy Spirit, teach us how to agree together as a family, to agree about anything and everything, so that whatever we ask will come to pass and be done for us by our Father in heaven. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you very much for all of you who were able to connect with us. My name is Valerie. I would be having a conversation with you today about a subject that is very dear to me, and I believe very dear to you too. The theme of our conversation is Solidarity Among People of African Descent in the U.S., SAPAD, the challenges and opportunity within the Catholic African Diaspora. We will be addressing three different parts today. The first part is going to be to identify the African diaspora in the context of this conversation. The second part is going to be discussing about the challenges. And the third part is how to join hands together to move forward. The African diaspora, as I'm talking tonight, concern mainly a couple of groups. I call them the triad, the African American, the African immigrants, and the Black Caribbean. Those are the group I will be addressing today. I also want to mention that starting this conversation is just the beginning of a call to all of you, my brothers and sisters, to join me within the Catholic Church. And what I personally wish for all of us tonight is to transform ourselves and help others also do the same. I'm not here to lecture, and of course, I'm not here to transmit. We all know that the history of the human migration has started about 70,000 years ago, and it started out of Africa. So the continent has had multiple migrations, but the migration that concerns us today is the most recent migration, namely migrations through the dispersal of Africans from the continent to the Americas, what are called the dispersal through slave trade. And then the recent arrival of African-born in the US. So we will stay focused on those three groups. So I have here a picture that we all have seen many times. It's a picture of one of the plantations in South Carolina. And then I have another picture that I call colonization through the French. And I have something that all these true groups have experimented, what I call racial discrimination. And then I have labels that have been given to all of us, African American, and Black Caribbean, that whether through slavery or through colonization, we have always been labeled as very primitive and sometimes seen as people with intellectual deficiency. Those are the commonalities that we have, whether we have lived in the continent of Africa or in America. We also have collectively experienced racism, social injustices, discrimination, and many more big and little things that are putting us behind. I would also like to address the topic of the African Catholic in the US in this context, because in order for us to have a conversation, we have to know who we are. And for this afternoon, I will start with the African Catholic. Who is the African Catholic in the US? There's no one single prototype talk about the African Catholics, because like we know, Africa is not one single country. We have about 54 officially, and we have differences within those 54 countries, ethnic groups, and regions. But the African Catholic is someone, as you see here, the picture. I love this picture because I may have been one of these young lady chairing Pope John Paul II when he came to Cameroon in 1985. But I could also be here in this group of African women from a Catholic group in Houston. The picture was taken in 2018. So there's no one specific identification when we're talking about African Catholic. But the African Catholic is someone who's looking for a community to belong to. The African Catholic is looking for hospitality and intentional friendship. An African Catholic like to celebrate life, but also celebrate death and suffering. The African Catholic is vibrant. The African Catholic understand the viral principle in the Bantu context. The principle says that the notion of this viral force recalls the belief that human beings form part of the community of life within the realm of the cosmic spirit. The African Catholic enjoy the connection between the I and the we, because their identity is ingrained in the community. The African Catholic does not see themselves in terms of skin color. And you will recall that Africans do not like being labeled as Black, because in the African continent, Black or Blackness is the default. We are not African because we are Black. We identify with our ethnic groups, our regions, our languages. The African Catholic is a mother, a sister, a father, a professional, someone with multiple identities. The African Catholic is also someone who's struggling. And because we struggle, church matters a lot to us. Because when we go to church, we feel like we belong. We belong to a place with people who look like us. They might not look like us in terms of skin color, but they look like us because we worship the same God. We meet to church because we like to experience the same thing, the love of our God, but we also like to share our experiences. Most of us Africans came here not knowing where we're heading to. So when we go to church and meet other Africans, we cry together, but we also laugh together. We share our news. We complain and comfort each other. We mourn together. We offer spiritual support. We support each other in so many ways. We pray. We visit. We cook. We network. We give each other tips about how to look for a job, how to hide from ICE. We reconnect with others. We experience small and big things. That's where the African church, the African Catholic is. That's why we go to church. We also go to church for many other reasons that I'm not going to mention here because we know them. I brought this one because they are specificities that people might not see or know when they see us in our vibrant bubus. We have multiple identities, and those identities are sometimes the reason why we stay strong even when things are very difficult for us. I brought this picture here because it reminds me of a group that I'm very familiar with. This is the African Heritage Mass picture taken last year. In this group, we have Swahili and Francophone choirs singing together. So this is another symbol of who the African Catholics are. The African Catholic also has a lot of contradictions. We know that God is the supreme being and God is everything. But yet, our African rituals are very strong in our lives and they do influence our decisions. We believe in supernatural forces and sometimes we take actions based on those beliefs. Sometimes those actions are devastating. They have consequences on our families and our well-being. We have not abandoned our religious roots because those roots are part of our culture. We might not talk about those experiences with African Americans, but they are part of who we are. African Catholics believe in witchcraft. They believe in supernatural forces too. And sometimes we take major actions based on those beliefs. This is one of the fundamentals of our identities. We constantly battle with our spirituality. We do because we met Christianity through missionaries that were not aware of our way of life. This theme has been really debated many times. Even I still remember in 1994 and 2009, under the leadership of two popes, we are juggling between our spirituality that is shaped to some extent by our indigenous inclusive view of our spiritual world. But yet, what we have in front of us is the new frame of references that was introduced by missionaries. And that battle has not been settled yet. We carry it everywhere we go. I will address an important part of challenges that we face in the US, and that's part 2 of this conversation. As Catholic in the US, we have environmental challenges, we have self-inflicted challenges, we have challenges that we have inherited, we have financial challenges, we have cultural challenges, and we have social cultural challenges. Some of the challenges that I'm going to name here are not going to be categorized. But one of the most frustrating is that we are usually ignored in the discourses of the church. We are invisible because we are powerless. We are isolated and we are lonely. We don't have allies. We don't have allies within the African American groups. We don't have allies within the Caucasian groups. We also deal with other challenges that are very personal. Residencies in the US. Some of us have to hide because they don't have the resident permit. Some of us are unable to adapt to the new culture. Some of us have limited potential and limited opportunity. Some of us do self-segregation. They isolate themselves. But we also live between multiple worlds. We live in the world that we left behind, and we live in the world that is in front of us. We live in a world that we left behind. We might not even understand what it became after we left, but yet we dream of that world. We don't look at the present. We dream of the future that we don't know. We don't focus on where we are. We focus on what we think should be or will be. We are scared. We are scared to speak up. We are scared to share our stories because our stories sometimes hurts. We are scared to take risks because when we take risks, we might reveal details that are even more hurtful. Yet, we are very tribal thinking. We first see ourselves as members of a tribe before seeing ourselves as citizens of any specific country. And you can just imagine how our quote, Americanizations is very, very difficult. We have a lot of expectation for our children, but our family also have a lot of expectation from us. We can't travel back home as much as we have loved to. We can't bury our fathers and mothers, and our children do not have the privilege of seeing their grandparents or their cousin. And those things have a devastating effect on us. We are homesick, but yet we don't do anything to make America our home. We always think of what's going to happen when we go home, when we go back, and I call this return and get it. The bird that you're seeing here is one of the Sanfoka symbols. Sanfoka is an ethnic group in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa mainly, where the birds always look back. Our decisions are based on the behavior of this bird, the concept of returning home, returning somewhere else, returning but not being really present here. We focus on that return and fail to create real bonds and connections where we are. We don't get involved. We don't learn to understand our communities because we think we will return. And because of that thinking, we also raise our children thinking that we one day return. We have been planning the return for many years now, but we don't return really because at the end of the day, we live here. That concept of return had isolated us from our African American brothers and sisters because we don't listen to the cry. We don't join with them when it comes to fighting social injustices, discrimination, and racism because we think it's theirs, not ours. But yet, when we are on the streets, there's no difference between them and us. We are all Black people. That's how we are seen. We are here, we are members of dioceses, but we see a lot of challenges that those dioceses affect. I do understand the intentions of dioceses when it comes to dealing with Africans, but I also do understand the frustration. Dioceses want to see numbers. Dioceses want to see our teething. Sometimes dioceses don't know how to identify our needs because the lack of appropriate pastoral care. Sometimes dioceses don't know how to appropriate resources because we hide. My personal experience has been very difficult when engaging our people to identify themselves as member of the Catholic Church. And that has a good reason. Many of our members who are here have gone through a lot of emotional distress. Some of them are refugees. Some of them were imprisoned for things they didn't do. And the fear has followed them everywhere they go. So dioceses in America do not have real data on who is a member of the church. Dioceses also have outreach concern. They don't know where to find us. They don't know how to get us. They don't know how to speak to us. They don't even know who speaks on our behalf. Their staff is not trained to handle our concerns. And of course, we have a problem of mistrust, misinformation, too many inaccurate information spread out, under communication, and language and cultural barriers. We are not a heterogeneous group where one fit for all can be applied. We are different. We have different identities. We have different needs. And sometimes it's just very difficult for well-intentioned dioceses to work with us. And this is the most important part. As I said at the beginning, I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to encourage each one of us to look at the other as brothers and sisters and join hands and work African American Catholic. We need to have a dialogue. And the dialogue should start today, not tomorrow. Because as we all know, both of our groups have gone through hurts and struggle. And the struggle were parallel. African Americans did not come to America because they wanted to. They were enslaved. They were forced to be here. They didn't have the time to say goodbye. And I believe that they have been wondering if those who remained back in Africa had been looking for them. I recall a conversation I had when I first moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. I had met a wonderful lady who did a recital on slavery. And at the end of the conversation, she said something that still hurts. I believe it hurts her and it's still hurting me too. She said, they sold us and I'm wondering if they even think of us. So I walked to her and I said, no mother will ever be the same after losing the child. Just imagine that I'm the mother who lost you. And here I am, you and I. You, my daughter, me, your mom. We can't change what happened to us, but we can learn to move forward, stronger, together, holding hands. While African Americans were going through discrimination and still there, belittlement, prejudice, exclusion, violence, inequality, Africans were having their own part. Colonization, neocolonialism, poverty, social injustice, corruption, health crisis, and we can go on and on and on. We cannot stay and start thinking what could have been. It's too late now. We can't change what happened, but we can change our future. We can learn to work together. We can hold hands. And I call it the face-to-face of two sisters How do we connect? How do we learn to stick together, to put our differences aside? And we have many differences. We all know that. We have been trading jabs for too long now. We even have in the past some collaboration. We used to call it Pan-Africanism, supported by the African American communities in the US. Black people have been complaining that African Americans failed to open doors to them when they first came to the US. African American has done the same thing. Both groups have misinformed about each other. Both groups also have listened to other voices that have truly encouraged the perceived conflict. Sometimes the media has not done a good job. Both groups do not rely on each other because they don't want to create joint communities. They don't even encourage their own children to interact. For the African, the identity frame in the country of origin shaped the inference. We always see ourselves as member of the other side. For African American, it's not the same. America is the country, it's the only country they know. I know there are many African Americans who are settling in Africa, and that's okay, just like African are here. But for the majority of African American, America is the country. That's why when non-American insults America, African American are upset because this is the country. This is the only place they call home. And I think we who have the privilege of calling another place home should be mindful of that detail. Africans have also refused to associate with the term Black for another reason. Many of us moved here and we heard so many things about Black American that we thought associating with Black means associating with poverty or lack of opportunity or crimes or any other negative connotation. So we prefer to distance themselves, hoping that by distancing ourselves from our brothers and sisters, we will become, or we will be seen, or we will be getting closer to whiteness. But that's not true. We cannot switch from being African to being white. The best we could get is being African and being African American. So if we still compete for those little attentions, it means that we haven't understood how America functions. We also compete with African American because of the little opportunities that are available. But African American have been our brothers from the get-go. We are like two sisters separated from birth. This is the time where we all should roll our sleeves and think about the type of leadership that we individually can initiate. This is an opportunity for all of us. Leaders are different from managers, and each one of us should see themselves as a leader. What do I mean by leadership? I'm not talking about leadership in terms of DNA.com. I'm talking about little things, little gesture, simple as inviting someone to sit by your side, being curious and asking their name. Do not worry about the accent because I don't worry about yours. When you hear my accent, that should tell you that I speak other languages and that I have another background, probably different than yours. Let's find something that we can do together. Find something in the other person that can make you smile to them. Let's find something that we all have in common. If you can remember that something, at least remember that we are all Catholics. Laugh with one another. Teach us something that we don't know, or that we may have not known. Teach all about your society. Teach all about how you raise your children. Listen to us. Listen to one another. Do not judge because we have different experiences. But having different experiences does not make them deficient. They're just different. Let's be open-minded to one another. Let's be welcoming. Let's use the language of ongoing regard, appreciating. Our gesture matters. Gestures are just like words out of our mouth. It's not about big things, but it's about little moments. Let's create memories together. If not for ourselves, at least for our children. Because the reality is that there's no difference between my child and that of my friends who was born here. They are all Black children in America. Be a member of this big village. Inspire all of us. Inspire us to be better. Give us a seat at the table. Effective leadership also means taking risk. Taking risks is an important part of assuming leadership. Every time we take risks, we open new doors to learning about others, but most importantly, to learning about ourselves and to discover who we are truly meant to be. We should not deny ourselves the opportunity to discover the better version of ourselves. We should be open to change and challenge the status quo. Family reunion, I watched a movie called Medea's Family Reunion, where we have a large family, the good, the better, the bad, the worst, name it. But the family is a family. In a family, we need to remember that there are different approaches to solving the same problem. A family means that each one of us is equally important. A family also means that we are tolerant, that we listen to each other, that we learn from each other, that we support each other. We should not complain about what others do unto us when we are doing the same thing to each other. It's easy sometimes to sit and look at the injustice, discrimination, lack of opportunities that are denied to us, to our people. But what are we doing to ourselves? Doing exactly the same thing. We're hurting each other. We're not supporting each other. We're not creating opportunity for each other. We're holding information from each other. It's not a family. Being a family means that we add to the number, that we bring new perspective, new stories, new skills. We are the future of the church. We, the Black people, we are the future of the church. But we have to learn to know one another. We have to build and nurture our relationships. We have newcomers in our groups. Let's welcome them. Let's listen to the challenges. Let's listen to the pain and the suffering. Listen to the story. Let's get involved intentionally to activities that give hope to our people. Let's create within our dioceses, within our congregations, groups where we can meet. Let's not just meet when we have an African heritage celebration. It's once a year. Let's meet frequently where we can talk and exchange and learn. There's so many things that we can learn from each other. Let's be each other's shoulder. We can start today, not tomorrow. The church has done a lot by allowing African priests to be part of this journey. But the Catholic Church can also be a facilitator to repair our relationship. The Catholic leaders can bring a fresh perspective to this relationship. Catholic leaders have the power, as they did in the past, in making sure that their members, both African and African American, are side by side. That conversation has not taken place yet. African groups are very grateful that they can worship in their different languages. And that's something that we very appreciate. But we also appreciate if we are with our African American together. We should think big. We should think big because we need to love one another first, but love one another from an intimate and compassionate touch. We'll have to love one another by serving each other. We have to repel and fight all sorts of discrimination and exclusion within our groups. It's about all of us together. It's not about the others, it's about us. I have read a quote from Jacob Conte. Jacob Conte is a Sierra Leonean born and a US citizen now, but someone who immigrated from Sierra Leone in 1987. And he said, the quote I'm reading, "It's only when you and I unite to instill discipline and respect for each other than the chasm that has divided us will narrow." And when he said us, he was referring to African and African American. So this is a time now that we unite and look forward together. We can't change the past. We can't change what happened to us, but we can change our future. And we are the future. Our children are the future. Don't leave this responsibility to the next generation. We can do it. We have seen people reconcile. We can learn from them, adapting it to our individualities and specificity, but we can still do it. If we were united, what would you be? If we were united, we will be celebrating our differences, yet we'll be a family once again at last. I have a few questions here that I would love to address. The first question is from Berlitz. Where are the solidarity among people of African descent groups in Los Angeles? I am not in Los Angeles. This is the beginning of a conversation that is just about to take place. If you can start a movement there, I think that it would be just amazing. As of now, I don't think that there's any place that is working on SAPAD. The idea came after I have attended a training workshop in North Carolina in just exploring African and African American relationship, and I thought that I would share this idea with other groups, and I was very grateful that the opportunity was given to me. Yeah, if you can start it in Los Angeles, that would be amazing. I have a comment here from Simona, because I disagree with you framing that African American African share a sense of victimhood to imply self-victimhood would mean that the United States is an equal opportunity country, which is not. Instead, no, I'm not saying that. Actually, I spoke about exclusion and discrimination in the U.S. I'm not framing that African American African share a sense of victimhood. It's not about victimhood. African American have had an experience that African have not shared, because most African living here are from the new vague of immigration I would say last 50 years. So I'm not talking about victimhood. My goal is not to stay in victimhood. As I said during my presentation, we can't change the way things happen in the past, because if you stay focused on what happened in the past, we never move on. We acknowledge what happened in the past, but we can work together, brother and sister, African and African American. There will always be discrimination and racism in America as long as we are in the system of race, white and black. So in that sense, things will never change. But I think we have the power to hold hands and move forward. Without underrating the great impact of slavery, that is from Father Ezetu. Without underrating the great impact of slavery and the challenges facing African immigrants, isn't it true that the sense of victimhood largely instilled into we Black, African American alike inhibits a lot of necessary solidarity and growth among Africa? Absolutely, I do agree with you. I still believe in solidarity among African and African American Catholic. That's what I said with the first comment. I'm not going to rate, I don't have the experience of slavery in the US. I don't even think that I'm qualified to speak about slavery. What I want and my sense and the idea that I still believe in is that we can work together as African American Catholic and be there for one another. Absolutely, I will post the slide, and it's going to be available. So with the bullet point here. That is from Tina. Are there currently any strides for an invitation to dialogue between African and African American Catholic? Would the NBCC be willing to partner with Black Catholic Ministry? And I think everybody's listening. That would be amazing, where we can sit, because 45 minutes on a theme that is as important as this is not enough. If we have the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation and a dialogue, and I always say it's not about blaming anyone. It's just about how we can learn from each other, because we have different experiences. Even within the African groups, I'm a Bassa from Cameroon. Another Bassa from Cameroon who might be from the English-speaking part may have had a different experience. So we just need to have the opportunity to sit down and learn from each other first, and understand and encourage. And I think that's something that do not need a big theory. Because if we keep going back and forth with what happened and what didn't happen, then we still we are not giving ourselves enough chance to move forward and allow our children to live a full life, whether here or in Africa. So, yes, I agree with you. We're looking forward to see if the Catholic Church is going to encourage us in that sense. This is from Lambert. How can a theology of diaspora help us bridge the division between African and African American? my understanding has always been that in order for us to bridge the division, we have to listen to each other. We have to listen to each other's stories, because stories connect people. Your story might be different from mine, but if you are positive enough to see some connection between what you say, what your experience has been, and mine, then we can move forward. Listening to each other's stories and accepting that though different, we have something in common, it's a good move. Sally Ann, my ancestors were enslaved on a plantation less than 2 miles from my church. Many of the members of my church are descendants of slave owners. What is the best way I can support my church in educating all our members? Absolutely, that's a beautiful question. Yes, Sally Ann, telling the story as it is, not as they want you to tell it. Tell them the church, and the church has done so many things, not just here in terms of slavery. Even in Africa, we know stories that are not very encouraging, but we are Catholic, and we know that the best move is sometimes to pardon. Doesn't mean that we forget, but we pardon. When we pardon, then we can look things in a different way and understand that those who hurt us and who put harm on us and our children are guilty, but it's up to God to make the final sentence. So, and our liberation is also would mean that we pardon and we look forward to writing our own stories, and that story include pardoning and staying on the positive side. Yes, churches have not been have been sinners just like other groups, but I think we need to move forward and give ourselves the chance to live a fuller life. Okay. I have a question from Stefan. How can we support and assist priests who are African born to more effectively minister to African American Catholics? The church has, many dioceses have been bringing up priests from Africa, and I think that's where collaboration between African American and African Catholic is really, really important. When priests come here, they are new. They don't have, most of them live in remote areas. They don't have, they are lonely. They don't know the system. They don't know the culture. They might know the language, but they struggle to fit in. And African American can be a huge assistant in that area, where we can have, I always think of that brochure, little pamphlet, things to know when a priest comes here, making sure that they understand little things like, what to do and what not to do, what to get what, how to behave in specific situations. You see, African people are very, the notion of space, it's unique. I've learned in America that, you have to give people the space. So, but those are things that can be tricky if you come from a place where being close to people means being around them and sitting by them and talking to them all the time. So African American can be of a big help in that sense, that they give a tour to our priests just to prepare them for the mission. What would support look like that a fellow Catholic could offer to an African? A lot. I talk about isolation, but I also talk about stories sharing. See, Africans, when they come here, and I say there are many Africans, there's not one prototype of an African. I'm talking about those who need help. When they come here, they need people to listen to them. They need people who listen to their stories. They need people to tell them how we live in America. How we live in America is different from how we live in Africa. They come here, they don't have families here. They come here, they don't speak the language. And there are many things that can be helpful if we have someone who will just be there. It can be a phone call, it can be just a note of encouragement. There are so many ways that we can help Africans here. Africans sometimes do not share their struggle because they don't feel understood. And just having people who volunteer to listen, it's the beginning of what I call the beginning of this dialogue. Pierrette, I will send you a copy of the presentation. I have it. That's just send me your contact. Actually, my contact is already there. I will make sure that you get a copy. This is my contact. This is Mariana. I'm originally from Brazil, and like those from African countries, the Black population is the majority population. Being a minority makes groups stick together to help each other. Do you think that being a minority in America is an obstacle for African American to come together? Yes, Mariana. Not only being a minority, but also fighting for the same resources. You see, that's the problem. When there's something for African American, sometimes you hear Africans say, I'm not African American. I am but Cameroonian American. I am Nigerian American, because sometimes by having this hyphenated identity, the perception is that whatever that resources is might go to us, because then suddenly we don't want to be African American because of the lack of the resources that is available for the entire group. So we try to break being African or being Black with another identity. That's one of the reasons why we like to be Cameroonian American, Nigerian American, Ghanaian American. Lack of resources, because what is left for us is too small, and we have to fight to get it. Do you find African Catholics willing to work with African American in dioceses? As I said, it's a yes or no, but a yes or no because the lack of information. I do believe that we don't know each other, and we don't take the time to know each other, to learn about each other, to humble ourselves and to listen to each other. That's why the bickering and the emphasizing on the differences that we have. Yes, we have differences, but even sisters from the same family, even twins have differences. But yeah, we tend not to want to work together because of the perception that we have towards the others. But the perception comes because of miscommunication and mistrust. Simona, what will the follow-up in local parishes to start having face-to-face conversation? I am a part of the diocese and I will support and speak. Absolutely. Face-to-face, I said, let's start a group. Let's just start something. Let's have a conversation. When I think of conversation, I'm not talking about the blame game. We are not responsible of our separation. We were separated. I took the analogy of a mother who lost a child, and suddenly both of them are in the same room. Instead of focusing on what happened and what did not happen, let's focus on here we are now. We are here now. What can we do now? How can we hold hands now? How can we progress together now? Because we will never have the answers of what happened to our families, to our brothers and sisters, but we can have an answer to how we want to move forward. What could mainly white Catholic parishes contribute? We need allies. We can't move together. And I didn't want to use this 45 minutes to talk about allies. Yes, each group needs allies. We need our white Catholics. Our white Catholic is not out of this debate. We are Catholics, so it's about all of us. But I just I wanted to focus on how African and African American can stop trading jabs and see each other as brothers and sisters. Yes, we need our white Catholics, and we need the encouragement. We need the contribution. We need them to sit with us at the table and help and facilitate and refresh our thinking when it comes to this relationship. Absolutely. Can you please elaborate the step African groups can take for the parishes to listen to us? One step that I always say, when we have something, when something is happening in America within the parish, let's get involved. Let's be there. Let's whether we have been invited or not, if we hear about it, let's go as African. When people share stories, they learn to know each other, and that's how we create little talks. How we see in the other person something that we may not have seen in different situations. So being working side by side and seeing each other very often, it's a good way to start. It's not going to be magic. It's not going to be a witchcraft. It's the little moments, the little steps. Let's acknowledge the Africans. I always say, if something happened in Africa, let's talk about it in the church. During the prayer of the faithful, why not mention if there's war? Let's pray for African brothers who are fighting in Congo, in Cameroon. Let's say it. It's not about big theory. It's just about making people feel like they are seen. That they are seen. Let's acknowledge them. If we see a face that is not familiar walk into church, that I was welcomed to my church. Let's just extend our hand and say, hey, you are new here. This is the first time I'm seeing you. This is the beginning of conversation. It's not about big theory. I'm not a theorician. This is not my. I think that we cannot think that magic is going to happen. It has to be the thing that we do every day. Our interactions, the little moments, the big moments, being inclusive.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. We appreciate it all, and we appreciate everyone's questions that were submitted. We'll take the ones that weren't answered, and we'll try to get to them either in a follow-up presentation or via email. We'll see what we can do about that. Thanks again, Valerie, for presenting. And thank you, everyone who tuned in and joined us this afternoon. The recording of this webinar will be available at the same link you used to register. It'll also be available on our YouTube channel, and you can find the link to that in about the next week or so at CatholicApostolateCenter.org and NBCCongress.org. You're welcome to share it with anyone you'd like. As always, our content is free to share. If you haven't yet found us on social media, please like and follow us, the Catholic Apostolate Center and the National Black Catholic Congress on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, in the hope that we'll continue to share, to reach more people with spreading the message of the gospel. In the words of St. Vincent Pallotti.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Bye-bye.